10 best Excel functions that you must know to help you on your daily basis and to automate tasks and save time with Excel. Each one of those 10 different functions that we're going to see here, we have a practical example. So let's start with the first function, that is the VLOOKUP function. And of course, Excel has many different formulas and functions. But here we're going to focus on the 10 best functions, whether to help you on your daily basis or to help you on a job interview or to save time with Excel, to automate tasks, and on and on. The first one is the VLOOKUP function. Basically, the VLOOKUP function can help us bring the corresponding result for something that we are looking for. This example right here is just a sample. I have a sales report with the date, the brand, the cost. Everything within the cost column is blank, as we can see. And then I have the item name, the customer name, and also the price. I want to have the cost because I want to compare with the price to see the profit, let's say. However, everything within the cost column are blank. So to the right, I have a list where I can see each one of the products that I have, the items, and the cost for each one of those items. So what I can do is I can either manually or automatically check the item and take the corresponding cost. And that way I can take this cost and input in my sales report. However, instead of doing it manually, I can automate this task with the VLOOKUP function. So let's say the first product that I have is creatine 8 ounces. So I can take here as reference, let's say creatine 8 ounces, and then use this cost right here to fill the first cell that I have in the cost. But because I have a lot of rows, maybe it can take a long time to complete this task. That way, it's better to automate with the equal sign VLOOKUP function. Let's double click in the function to select 1, 2. The first argument that we're going to have is the lookup value, the thing that we are looking for. And in this case right here, I'm looking for the first product that I have, that is the item to the right, creatine 8 ounces, comma, to move to the next argument. And now we have the table array. The table array is the table that I want to use to check for the product and also to check for the result. That way, I must start selecting the range using the first column where I have my criteria or the items. I cannot start my selection with the brand, for example, because the brand is not a condition, is not a criteria. The thing that is the criteria is the items. So I can select like this, a small range, or I can select everything within the column L, for example. So click over the letter L and move on to the M. Okay, so select both of those columns, the one where I have my criteria and the one that I want to bring back as the result. Now we can press comma to move on to the next argument, that is the column index number. Basically, is the column that I want to retrieve as result. And here I have as the first column selected the item, and the second one is the cost. What is the column that I want to retrieve, return as result? The second one, right? The cost. So the number 2 is the argument that I need to append in the column index number 2, okay? Comma, and now the last argument is the range lookup. If I want to use a exact match or not. I want to use the second option, exact match, because I want to return exactly the same thing that I'm looking for. So double click 1, 2 to select this option and then press enter and we're done. So as we can see, creatine 80 ounces is equal to 76.30. Let's manually check just to see if it's correct. Here we have the item and here we have the same cost. Okay, so it's 100% correct. Now go back to the first cell where we did the function. Let's click, hold, and drag down in the bottom right corner of the cell, or double click at the bottom right corner, 1, 2, and yeah, that's it. Now we're done. So all the rows contain the same function with the correct result. This is how we can use the VLOOKUP function in Excel. Now the next function that we're going to see is the XLOOKUP function. Basically, the difference is both of those functions can help us look up for something and bring the corresponding value, like we did before with the VLOOKUP function. However, there is a limitation, let's say, for the VLOOKUP function. That is, as we saw, the first range that I need to select is the item, because the item is my criteria. And then I can return as the result anything that is to the right of my first column of my reference. So if I want to bring the cost, okay, it's right. If I want to bring the shelf location, okay, I can also do it. However, if I'm using the item as criteria in the VLOOKUP function and I want to bring back the brand as result, I cannot do this logic, let's say, because it's not work in this way. The VLOOKUP function always working from the left to the right. So this is the way the VLOOKUP function works, from the left to the right. And if I need to bring the brand, so this is the question, how can I do it? I need to use a different function, or I need to take the column that is in the wrong direction, let's say, and move to the right of my reference. But let's say it's not always that it's possible to do, because I can't move, I can't change the arrangement of this list that I have. And in this next example, I have a similar situation. However, here I have the date, the brand, the product name, and the shelf location that is blank. And I need to fill with the correct information. So from the product, that is my criteria, I want to retrieve the shelf location. So let's take a look here. What is my criteria? The item, right? And what I need to bring back as result? The shelf. So here we have the first problem, considering the VLOOKUP function. I can't take something that is to the left of my reference. I only can take something that is to the right. That way, we can use the XLOOKUP function. This is why it's important to know both of those functions. And yes, if you want to use only the XLOOKUP function, you can do so. You don't need to use the VLOOKUP function. You can always use the XLOOKUP function because it's a more advanced function, let's say. It's a newer function in Excel. Let's use here, so in the shelf location, underneath the header, equal sign, the VLOOKUP function, double click to select 1, 2. As before, the first argument that we have is the lookup value, and this one is going to be the product that I have to the left, comma. The lookup array is going to be, let's say, the item, and I can either select a small range like this, or I can click over the letter that corresponding to the column to select everything, the entire column, and then comma. Now I need to select the return array, the column, the range that I want to retrieve as result. And this one is going to be the shelf location. Okay, comma. And now we can move on to a next argument that is if not found, and then comma, match mode, and then comma, cert mode. However, we don't need to fill in those three last arguments because they are optional. So let me read it off the comma and stick with the first three arguments only. Close parentheses. So basically I selected the item and then the column where I want to use as criteria to look up the item and the column that I want to retrieve the corresponding value. Now let's hit the enter. Okay, A1. So creatine 80 ounces is in the shelf location A1. Let's check if it's correct. So A1 is right here and the creatine 8 ounces is, yeah, okay, it's perfectly correct. At the bottom right corner of the cell, click, hold, and drag down, or double click, 1, 2, and we're done. So this is how we can use the XLOOKUP function, and this is the difference between the V and the X function. Now, our next example, we have the if function, and here we have a different example. I need to create a status based on the final grade, based on the average for each one of the students that I have. To the right, I have the both of criteria that I need to use. That is, if average is less than 6, so extra test. If the average is greater than or equal to 6, so approve it. Based on those criteria, I need to fill in the status. I can manually do it. Let's say the first grade that I have is 5, so extra test, enter. The next one is 7.5. That way I know it's approved. So I can input this word right here. Okay, I can manually create a solution like this. However, I think it's much better if we automate this task using the equal sign and then the if function to help us. Double click 1, 2 to select. Basically, the if function can look up for a, let's say, logical test and check. The logical test that I want to input here is if the average is greater than 6, let's say. So the student, okay, he's approved. However, else, if not, he needs to do a extra test. So we can input a value if the condition is true and one value if the condition is false or not true. This is how the if function works. As the logical test, I can use, let's say, the grade that I have to the left, and I can either use the first text as the criteria, less than 6, or I can use greater than 6. It doesn't matter. It's only going to change the logic. So let's say I want to start with less than 6. So if the average is less than 6, comma, so it indicates to me that the student needs to do an extra test. However, before we input this sentence here, it's very important to open quotations and then open and close quotations, right? But however, let's open quotations and then input the text that we need and then close quotations, quote unquote, comma, else if the grade is less than 6, so extra test. Else if not, so open quotations, approve it, close quotations, close parentheses, simple as that. Enter. Now let me click at the bottom right corner of the cell, hold and drag down, and we're done. So this is how we can do it. Very simple, right? And we can also change the criteria, the logical test, to use this new logical test to solve a different problem. Now let's move on to another function, that is the sum function. This is a very simple one, very basic, but it can help us a lot and can save a lot of time. Let's say I have just a sample here with the months and the quantity and the total. It doesn't matter what is the data set that we are using. If you need to add up values, make an addition of the values, you can use the sum function. So let's take a look here. I can either use the equal sign and then select the first cell where I want to use this value of the cell to be added up with another cell. So the first one, add to the second one, add to the third one, and on and on. And to the symbol that I'm using here is the plus sign. If I press enter, I'm going to have the result, the addition of those 3 first values. However, as we can see, we have a lot of different cells to select. That way it's going to take a long time to use a formula instead of using the sum function. Equal sign, sum function can do it much faster. Double click in the function 1, 2 to select. And the only thing that you need to do here is select the range where you want to use to make an addition. And then enter. That's it, simple as that. Just select the range and then hit enter. You're done. Another thing that we can do here, we can also add different ranges to the sum function. So let's say equal sign, sum function, double click 1, 2 to select. I want to use this range right here, and the other range is going to be the last 3 values. But how can I select both of those ranges? Let's select the first one and then comma. Now the second range can be this one right here. Let's add a third one, comma. The third range can be even a single cell like this, and then enter. So this is how we can use different ranges and also separate ranges within the sum function. Let me read it off the result, and then I want to add up the values that I have underneath the total. So equal sign, sum function, double click to select. I want to add up all those values and then enter. Okay, so this is the final result. This is how we can use this simple formula function in Excel, sum function. Another function that is very important and is very similar to the one that we just did, the sum function, is the SUMIF function. The difference between the sum function and the SUMIF function is the sum function can add up all the values that you selected in a range. However, the SUMIF function in Excel can add up the values that met with a certain criteria. So you can use a condition to make an addition or not of certain values. So let's say in this report that I have as the columns the month, the quantity, the type of the car, and also the total sold for each one of those cars, models that I have. And here I want to make an addition, not of the total sold that I have. So I don't want to add up all those values. However, I want to append a criteria to this calculation. So I want to know the total sold for, let's say, SUV, and then to the hatch, and on and on. I can use here the equal sign and then the SUMIF function to add up the values with a certain criteria. Double click to select 1, 2. First of all, the range. The range that is typing here is the range that is about the criteria. And this range In this case, it's gonna be the column C. I can also select, let's say, the column A to use the months as criteria. I want to know how much I sold per month, so I can use the column A. However, I want to use here the column C, the type of the car. And then comma, what is my criteria? My criteria is the name that I have to the left, comma, and the sum range is gonna be everything that I have within the column D, like this. And yeah, simple as that. If I press enter here, I'm gonna have not the grand total or the addition of all the values, but the addition of all the values that corresponding to the compact type of car. Now let's bring this formula down to make sure we can have for all the different rows and types. And yeah, that's it. So this is how we can make an addition of everything using a criteria. And to check if it's correct, let's say equal sign some function, double click on 2. Let's adapt all those previous values. And then I'm gonna press enter. $20 million roughly. Okay. So this final result needs to match with the equal sign some function, the addition of everything within the column D, the entire column. Enter. The separate values are correct because if I make an addition of those values, they are equal to the grand total that I did using the entire column. Another very important function is the average function. Like the name suggests, the average function can take the average of a range of values, of a set of values. Equal sign average function, double click once you to select. Let's say I want to know the average sold by a quantity standpoint. I can select everything within the quantity column and then enter. So this is gonna be my average for all those previous values that I selected. And even though, as we can see here, January has a value of roughly 400 units and July has a value of roughly 8,000. Even though those numbers are quite different, there's a large gap between those values. The average is roughly 600 units. So this is how we can find an average of a set of values. And of course, this is a function. To do it manually using a formula, it's gonna take a long time. However, we can do like this, equal sign, and then select the first number, add it to the second one, add it to the third one, add it to the fourth one, and on and on and on. Let me put everything within parentheses, so open parentheses in the beginning, after the equal sign, and close parentheses after the last range. Now I need to divide everything that I have by the number of things, and the number of things is equal to 3, right? Cell B2, B3, B4, 3 different values, so divide by 3. And then if I press enter, I'm gonna have here a average for those 3 different values that I selected. Let me read it off this information, okay? Now let's do the average again, but this time for the total sold. Equal sign, average, double click on 2 to select, and select everything. And if you want to separate the range for any reason, let's say this is the first range, comma, this is the second one, comma, this is the third one, comma, and this is the fourth one. You can do so. Just use comma to separate, to split the ranges. And then enter. Okay, this is the average. And this is how we can use this very basic function in Excel, the average. And now we know that if we have the if as a suffix or a function, it indicates that this function can be used with a criteria, such as equal sign average if function. Double click here, 1, 2. And in this example right here, I need to have the average sold per month, using so the months as the criteria. To the left, I have a very similar data set as before, with the month, the quantity, the type, and also the total. I can use either the total or the quantity to take as the average calculation. I want to use maybe the total, okay? But you can also use the quantity, doesn't matter. And the criteria to whether or not calculate the average is gonna be the month. First one, we're gonna start with January. So I want to take the first result, and then here down below again, this result right here, and everything that is different than January, we're gonna skip the results. So let's go back here to the function average if. The first thing is the range of our criteria. And this one is gonna be the column A, where we have the months. Now, comma, the first criteria is the name of the month itself, comma, and the average range can be either the quantity or the total. I'm gonna stick with the currency, and then I'm gonna press enter. Okay, so this is the final result. This is the average for the January month. This is the average per month. At the bottom right corner of the cell, hold and drag down, and yeah, that's it. Now we have the different averages for those different months. This is how we can use the AVERAGEIF function in Excel with this radical example. Now a different example, we're gonna use the COUNTIF function. In Excel, we have a function that is called equal sign count a function. 1, 2, that can basically count everything that you have in a selection. So if I want to count everything that I have in this range right here, or in this column, I can do so. So let me select a range like this. And then if I press enter, I'm gonna have all the cells within something. If the cell is blank, it's not gonna count anything. However, because I selected here 7 different cells, as we did so before, I have 7 as a result. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is how the COUNTIF function works. It can count all the cells that have something within it. It can be a number, a text, a formula, anything but a blank cell. We have a similar function that is equal sign COUNTIF function. And now we know that the if indicates a criteria to count. So double click 1, 2 to count, to take the sum, to take the average. I want to know here the total delivered orders per location. So I have many different locations and I want to count all of those different locations. First, the range that I want to use. The range is the column B. I can select the entire column B like this. However, because I have a merged cell in the first row, I can't actually select the column B. So let me select a small range like this. And then I go to hit comma. And then my criteria is going to be the name to the left. Enter. Okay, 11. If I click at the bottom right corner of the cell and hold and drag down, I can have the different results or the different locations. So this is how we can count with a criteria in Excel, and also how can we count in general using the COUNTIF function. Now the second to last function that we're gonna see is the large, and it's called large not because the function is very difficult to do or it's large with different arguments, but because it can retrieve the largest value of a set of values, or the second largest value, or the third, or the fourth, or on and on. So let's say I have a list of competitors, all the different teams, and also the time in minutes for each one of the competitors. If this was a race, let's say a race, the best time would be the lower values, right? The lower the value, the best the time, because it's a race, it's a challenge, let's say. So if someone has 85 as the final time in minutes, the one that has 55 is better because it's complete the lap faster than the one that had 85. Okay, so here we need to have the 10 worst times to eliminate the competitors. That way I can use the large function to help me. Equal sign large, double click 1, 2 to select. The only 2 things that I need to select here is the array, or the set of the values, and the k. The k indicates if I want to use the largest one, or the second largest one, or the third largest one, or the fourth, or the fifth, and on and on. Let's first select the range. That is going to be the column C, and then comma. The next argument, k, is going to be the number 1, because I want to have the largest value, or the worst time. Enter. Okay, 85. If I move on to the next row and then equal sign large again, double click 1, 2, again select the column C, comma. This time, instead of using the largest one, I want to use the second largest one. So 2 and then enter. 84.8 and on and on. But imagine if I need to do it 10 different times to have the 10 worst times, or 20, 30, 40 different times. It's going to take me a long time. So we can basically automate the order of those places, let's say, using a simple sequence. 1, 2, 3, and on and on. Let me select all those cells at the bottom right corner, click, hold, and drag down. Okay, until we have the number 10. Now, instead of manually input the k, we can use as the reference the cell that we have to the left. Equal sign large, double click 1, 2. The array is going to be the column C, comma, the k now is going to be dynamic So select the cell to the left, enter. If I hold and drag down this cell, we're done, because the reference, that is the cell to the left, also is going to be moved down following the function. So that's it. And if you want to retrieve the competitor name, you can use the VLOOKUP function or the XLOOKUP function in this case, because my criteria is the time and the competitor name is to the left of my criteria. Remember what I said before? We need to use here the XLOOKUP function. Equal sign, XLOOKUP function, lookup value is the time, comma, lookup array is the column C, comma, and the return is the column A. That's it. Enter. Click, hold, and drag down, and yeah, we're done. So this is the 10 worst times for all the competitors that we have. Move on now to the last but not least important function. We have something very similar. The same list, the same things, the same time. But I want you to do something different. The top 10 best times. So the smallest values, I need to bring it back here. So I can bring it back the smallest one, the second smallest one, the third smallest one, and on, as we learned it before. Bring it back until the number 10, or actually let's put until the 15, like this. The time is going to be equal sign. I want to retrieve the first smallest time, or small, double click, 1, 2. The array is going to be the column C, comma, the K is going to be the number to the left. Enter. And we can also complete this first row using the equal sign XLOOKUP function to return the competitor name. Lookup value is the time, comma, lookup array is the column C, comma, the return array is going to be the column A, the first one. Enter. Okay, let's select both of those rows, click, hold, and drag down, and we're done. This is how we can use all those different 10 functions in Excel, and I really hope this video can help you out. And if you have any questions or any suggestions to the next videos, of course, let me know. Comment down below, as every day has a new video. I see you there.